Hello everyone and welcome back to Great Broadway Fans YouTube channel. I'm Luke and today I am bringing you part 2 of this upcoming 4-part mini-series that I have planned on this channel involving movie musicals. Last week we talked about upcoming film adaptations of movie musicals that are happening in Hollywood, and there's a link in the video description to the video if you haven't seen it yet. And week 2 for this episode is going to be the top 10 stage musicals that deserve film adaptations. So in preparation for this video, I decided, how am I going to figure out what musicals deserve film adaptations? Because we could just do a top 10 list of my opinions, but I favor musicals that are kind of less popular and not as mainstream as most musicals are. So I'm like, how do I figure this out? So I could ask. I took a poll. I asked the wonderful people on my Instagram account, as well as starting a Broadway World message board thread, asking fans and theater lovers what stage musicals they want to see brought to the big screen for the very first time. Not remakes, but original film adaptations of stage musicals that have not been brought to the big screen for the very first time. So I've cobbled together a list, and since everybody voted for a ton of different musicals, I basically went with the ones that received the most votes and quantified it that way, and then also threw in a couple of my own personal choices. So here it is. The majority rule, democratically elected top 10 musicals that deserve film adaptations. Let's get started. All right. Number 10 is If Then. Now, I personally really enjoy this musical. I had the good fortune of seeing it when it was on its national tour. It came here to San Diego at the Civic Theater, and Idina Menzel was a part of it, and I absolutely adore this musical. I really think that it was a great vehicle for Idina, and I know that she has since left the national tour. She's moved on to other projects, but I seriously do think that I think the best way to capitalize on Idina's popularity, in my opinion, would be to make a film adaptation with her in the lead role of Liz/Beth in If Then. If you're not familiar with the show, If Then is a musical about a woman who moves back to New York City and has the potential to start her life over with 2 different scenarios, and the musical plays out both of them, with one of her timelines living out as Liz and another timeline living out as Beth, and how the main moral of the musical is the decisions that we make in life are so important, and you never know what path you might choose, or asking yourself the question, what if? But the reason I put it so low on the list is probably because I don't think that Idina... I don't know if Idina would be willing to do a film adaptation of If Then. It's definitely a good musical, but I think the only way that it could ever be made is if she was in the lead role, in my opinion. Okay, so number 9, interestingly enough, was Hamilton. I think that... I mean, we'll definitely get a Hamilton film adaptation. I mean, don't worry yourself. But Lin-Manuel Miranda was the one who said, we'll probably do it in about like 15 or 20 years. I mean, the show is still, I mean, it's having $1 million weeks. It has sold out for an entire year. You can't even get tickets through 2017 at this point. I mean, the show is just a monster runaway hit. There's going to be a sit-down production in Chicago. There's going to be a North American national tour. They're taking the show to London. The original Broadway cast was actually filmed, pro-shot with cameras, and that's probably going to be released either on DVD or maybe through Fathom Events, which would be exciting. But Hamilton is happening, people, and you shouldn't have to worry yourself. It's happening. Okay, number 8 was Ragtime. Fans really love this musical, and I personally have never seen Ragtime before. Basically, a comparison that I was told is that it's like the American version of Les Mis, and it has a bunch of different fictional characters and true stories and real people that are meshed together at turn-of-the-century America, and you basically have three groups. You have the immigrants, you have white Americans, and then you have African Americans all living together. And like I said, I've never seen it. I haven't listened to the cast recordings or anything, but fans want to see a Ragtime movie. And I think that it could happen. I think realistically it could. You'd either have to do it one of two ways. You would either have to do it as an independent film adaptation with theater and smaller movie stars, or go big budget Hollywood movie musical like Les Mis with big movie stars and then theater talent in the smaller roles. But Ragtime, people love it. Okay, number 7 is Miss Saigon. Now, Miss Saigon I talked about last week. It is getting a film adaptation. There's been no word yet on any casting. The revival is opening in this coming spring. It's actually returning to the Broadway theater where it opened. And so the London revival is closing and it's transferring to Broadway. And there is a planned film adaptation in the works, but there's been no major development about it. But fans, you clearly want to see Miss Saigon get made into a movie. I do too, because I've never seen Miss Saigon. However, there is going to be Fathom Events. I love Fathom Events. They constantly do ballets, operas, and in this case musicals. Fathom Events is going to not only be doing, they announced that they're going to be filming Newsies with a live audience and with professional cameras, but they're also going to be releasing Miss Saigon into theaters through Fathom Events. It was the London production that was filmed, and they're going to be showing it in American cinemas coming very soon this fall. But, like I said, a planned Miss Saigon adaptation is in the works. Number 6 is Follies. And I talked about Follies. And basically after, what was it? Into the Woods, excuse me. After Into the Woods, Rob Marshall was talking in an interview about how he wants to, if he had to take a crack at another Stephen Sondheim musical, what would it be? And he wants to do Follies. And Meryl Streep was in talks and in rumors to be involved in a Follies film adaptation. I don't know if she would play the role of either Sally or Phyllis. I'm assuming that she would play Phyllis. Just get Bernadette Peters to reprise her role as Sally. That would be great. I worry about Follies. Follies is a little bit like Ragtime. I think it has such an unfamiliar source material that the only way that you could do it is if you sunk a ton of money into it and you had a big Hollywood cast involved. The only other option, I could see Follies getting done live on television through NBC, but once again, you would need major talent to get butts on the couch to watch that. But people voted for Follies. They want to see Follies. Okay. Let's see. We're on number 5. And number 5 is Beautiful, the Carole King musical. And as I mentioned last week, there is a Beautiful film adaptation in the works. It's still currently running on Broadway. It just opened in London. It's on a North American national tour, and a planned film adaptation is in the works. No director or cast yet, but some producers are involved, including Tom Hanks. All right, number 4 is Spring Awakening. And as I talked about once again last week, Spring Awakening is planning on getting a film adaptation. Duncan Sheik made an announcement that he was like, I want to do a film adaptation of not only Spring Awakening, but my new musical, American Psycho. And while American Psycho, as I talked about last week, I don't think would make a good, the musical version of American Psycho wouldn't make for a good film adaptation, I think that Spring Awakening actually would. I think that the subject matter and the musical score alone, if you casted it right, if you casted it with teenagers, or young 20-year-olds, don't get movie stars or television stars, get original talent, and let the musical speak for itself, I think it would be really, really interesting. Okay, number 3 is The Book of Mormon. This musical, wow, it is currently in its 5th year on Broadway. The show still makes $1 million a week. The show is still selling out with every single performance. It's on a national tour, and it's a huge runaway hit. I think, like Wicked, I don't think that the Book of Mormon will get a film adaptation until it's well into its maybe 10th or 15th year on Broadway, depending on how long the Book of Mormon runs. I could definitely see a film adaptation happening, but like I said, it could either happen, like I said, if the show runs for 10 or 15 years total, then it might get a film adaptation. If it closes within the next 10-15 years, then it'll get a film adaptation, but don't hold your breath for a Book of Mormon adaptation. Nothing has currently been announced, but fans want to see it. Okay, number 2 on this list is Fun Home. And this is an incredible musical based on the true life story of Alison Bechdel. The show is about to close next month on Broadway. It's currently still playing at Circle in the Square. I think it's going to run through until like mid-September, and then it's going to close. But I think that show, that's really something interesting. That's one of those musicals where you could do it as either a big budget movie musical or an independent film like The Last 5 Years or Hello Again, and you could really do something unique and different with it. It's a great musical. It has a beautiful score, and fans voted for it so much that they wanted to see it get made. Okay, so before we get to the top one, a couple of honorable mentions that I thought were pretty noteworthy. Tuck Everlasting. The show was not a big success. It did not get a lot of Tony nominations. It closed prematurely on Broadway, but fans love Tuck Everlasting. The original Broadway cast recording is available to listen if you want to. Bridges of Madison County. Once again, that was it was not the awards darling that everybody thought it was going to be. It got a lot of technical nominations, but did not get a lot of acting, except for Kelly O'Hara, but did not get nominated for Best Musical when it was up, what was it, 3 years ago. Oh my gosh. But the show is still on a national tour, I think, or maybe, I don't know if the national tour is still running. But the original Broadway cast recording, the musical won Best Score for Jason Robert Brown. He won for orchestrations and he won for Best Original Score that year, which was pretty amazing. And fans voted for it, and I thought that it was noteworthy. Next to Normal. This is one that I could actually see getting made. Like as I said with Fun Home, I think that you could either do this as you could do it as a big budget movie musical, but I would much rather see it as a smaller film, as an independent film adaptation. It's very beautiful. It has a very poignant message and story about family drama and mental illness. And Next to Normal would really make, I think, if you did it right and you got the right cast, it could be really, really good. Another one that was on this list that people voted for that I really enjoy. I mean, the show it's up on my wall. Bonnie and Clyde. I think that America's fascination with Bonnie and Clyde is still so strong that that miniseries that got made like a year or two ago for the History Channel was fantastic. I loved it. And I really feel that Frank Wildhorn's score is a lot better than people make it out to be. Laura Osnes and Jeremy Jordan were fantastic in their roles. I would love to see them come back for a big budget film adaptation. Ooh, if Laura Osnes isn't a big enough star, Hollywood, why don't you get Anna Kendrick to play Bonnie? I think that would be really, really good. What were some other ones? Oh, I wanted to throw into the mix Sideshow. Bill Condon, who's actually going to be directing Beauty and the Beast, that's coming out in 2017, said that when the revival closed, he wanted to not only bring it to London, but he wanted to make a film adaptation. And I think that if Beauty and the Beast is a big enough success, I think that Sideshow could happen. If Disney is successful with Beauty and the Beast, I think that Sideshow could happen. Don't do it with Disney. Please. Dear God, no. I love you, Disney, but don't touch that. Get Warner Brothers or 20th Century Fox, or I don't know, the Weinstein Company, Focus Features. Do it with a studio that's more centered around making something a little more darker, a little more realistic and gritty, because Sideshow is a beautiful, beautiful musical that I think deserves a film adaptation. And so, with all of those honorable mentions, the #1 pick, fans want to see Heathers get made into a movie musical. Now, last week, forgive me, I forgot to include Heathers. But when the off-Broadway production closed in 2014, the producers said that they were planning for a Broadway bow in 2016 and planning on doing a film adaptation as well of the stage musical. If we're talking realistically, I think that a Broadway production of Heathers is more realistic than a film adaptation of the Heathers musical. For two reasons. One, I think that the original movie is so iconic and so beloved that I really don't see anybody possibly trying to remake Heathers on film. And two, I'm not a huge fan of Heathers. I liked it when it first came out, but then when I kept listening to the cast recording over and over, I'm like, this musical's like, I mean, fans love it. Fans clearly love it. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I think that the score is a little bit on the weak side, but it is a very beloved show. I mean, fans rallied around that musical and adored it. And clearly voted for it to get to the #1 spot on this list. But I think Heathers could happen, but don't hold your breath. And like I said, if we're thinking more realistically, I think that a Broadway production, a full Broadway production of Heathers, would be more realistic than a film adaptation. Okay, so that is the list. That is the top 10 stage musicals that you, the viewer, and the fans wanted to see get made into big budget movie musicals. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, for week 3, we are going to be discussing the top 10 movie musicals that deserve a remake. You can still vote for it. Go over to my Instagram, @GreatBroadwayFan. Find the photo that I posted about it, and you can still vote for it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you are not already subscribed. You can follow me on all of my social media, my Twitter and my Instagram. Links are in the video description. Please go support my other channel, Great Movie Fan. The links to subscribe are in the video description. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next week for part 3.